All right, here we are. After step one, we're moving on to step two. The frame pieces are cut out. We have our 4 frame pieces, all identical, all the same. All right, they all look like this. We have our 45-degree miter joints and our 90-degree butt joints here, okay? But obviously, the frame's not being held together by anything. Now we gotta put it together and use some joinery to do that, okay? So this is how we're gonna get started here. I already kind of pre-measured out my piece, but this is what we're going to look at. I'm talking about the back of the frame here, obviously. I wrote this down so you guys understand that I'm looking at the back of the frame. We're going to do all our markings and all our holes in the back of the frame so we don't see it after it's completed and it gets hidden, okay? So I started to lay out my pocket holes, and we're going to do pocket holes on this piece. We're going to do 2 of them here and 2 of them there to hold these 2 pieces together, the miter side and then the butt joint side. Okay, so I like to draw them in, and I suggest you guys draw them in. They don't have to be super neat, but just to keep yourself organized and see where things are going. Less likely to make a mistake that way. All right, so you see I have measurements here. I started and I did a measurement from here, the edge to that line is 9/16. Okay, and then I did the same thing on the other side. From one edge to the line is 9/16, and that's approximately where my pocket hole is going to go. That's going to be for that side. You'll see why I did 9/16 in a little while. All right, this side is going to go in at an angle because we are on a 45-degree miter. These 2 holes are 7/8 inches apart. Okay, but this first line here, we got to measure it a little bit differently. Okay. I'm measuring it at 2 5/16 inches from the tip, okay, and I'm also making a mark on the front here at 2 5/16, and then those 2 holes are 7/8 apart. Again, that will make sense once I show you something very shortly. But that's how we start to mark our pieces out. I highly suggest you do this. It keeps everything organized, and you're less likely to make mistakes, especially as a beginner. But again, back of frame, laying out the pocket holes with our measurements here. Okay, so here we are at the pocket hole jig. This is mine at home. It's a little beat up, but we have a very similar setup in the shop at school. All right, this clamp holds the wood in place, secures it down. All right, we watched a video on this before, but this also tells me on the side here that I'm at 3/4 of an inch. That's how thick my wood is. That's how it's set. And then I have 3 options here, A, B, and C, for the holes to drill, to put my drill bit in, okay? All right, so I told you before when we laid out our holes, we did them at 9/16, all right? And there was a reason for that, okay? This is the back of the piece, and when we drill our holes, we wanna make sure our holes are drilled in the back of the piece. So we're gonna be drilling from here, and if you see that the 9/16 pretty much lines up with A and C. That's why I did 9/16. So we're just gonna have to clamp our piece in place and drill through the holes at A and C, and that will give us the pocket holes there. Okay, so I'm gonna get my piece ready to put into the pocket hole jig so we can drill holes in it. I've got my marks on the back side, but I've also put the 9/16 marks on my front side, all right? Because this is gonna be a little bit easier when I put them into the pocket hole jig here. I can line up those lines with A and C because that's what we're gonna line up our lines with. And I clip this into place, okay? Nice and tight. All right, see, I have a little bit of a gap at the bottom there. That's not good. We gotta make sure we're all the way down, nice and tight. It's lined up. Clamp that in. All right, so it's in my jig now. All right, this is the back. All right, that's where our holes are gonna go, and then we're gonna drill them in. And it's nice and tight, no gaps, nice and level. All right, so this is the special drill bit that goes with the pocket hole drill system here. All right, this drill bit, when we put it in the drill, we'll drill the holes, it goes through, and as you see, it comes out through the jig there into your piece of wood, and it drills that hole in there. This is called a stop collar right here. This stops the bit from going too far in. It stops it. You got to go all the way down until it hits. That's when you know the hole is done properly. Okay, that's all set up for us in the shop beforehand. It's set up for the thickness of the wood. Okay, and then we use a battery powered drill gun, screw gun, whatever you want to call it. But we would have this here. We have a lot of these in the shop too. All right, the drill bit goes into what we call the chuck right there, and then we tighten it and we get ready to drill. Okay, so I put the drill bit into the chuck here, and this is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and we tighten this up. We make sure it's nice and tight, it's spinning nice and straight. I also put my drill on 2, which is a faster speed. That drills it better, okay? And that's ready to drill a hole. Again, we're going to put our piece in, lining it up with holes A and C, locking that in. It's basically just centered, okay? We're pretty good in there. All right, so I'm going to do holes A and C and drill those out. You're going to see me go all the way in until it hits the stop collar. I'm going to go all the way there, and I'm going to ream it in and out to clear out all the chips that are going to be created here. That's one hole, and then into C. It does take a little force, but just keep going at it. Now, we have our pocket holes cut into our piece pretty much exactly where we wanted them to be. And now we got to work on these ones on the miter. These are a little more tricky. Okay, so we want to do the holes on the miter. We're going to put them into the pocket hole jig just like before. So it's at an angle. It's a little different from what we did before. But we had some specific measurements here, and then you got to get that right. 2 5/16, and then the 7/8, okay? I'm going to show you why that's so specific and why that is important to do that, all right? So keep in mind, when we do the pocket hole jig, and I put my drill in, okay, that drill bit comes out of that hole, all right, and drills through the piece of wood right there, okay? All right. So if I put a piece in at an angle, and I say let's concentrate on this middle hole here, I could still see the top of this hole right there, okay? Right in that middle hole, right? But I'm gonna plop this piece in just as an example, all right? Now if I go and drill into this middle hole here, which is B, all right, you can see the bit come through. Okay, and it basically takes a chunk out of the side of the piece of wood here, okay? Now, if that was your frame, it's not gonna look good. It's gonna be kind of ruined, okay? So we have to be a little more careful about where we're putting our pieces in the jig when we do this. So that's why I have the 2 5/16, all right? It's really important, all right? If I line that 2 5/16 line up with A right there, okay? It just about covers that hole right there, and then we won't get that chunk taken out of our frame when the drill bit comes through. So it's real important to line up that 7/8 and that 2 5/16. And right here you see how it's lined up from the tip of the miter to line A is 2 5/16, and then the other line lines up with B right there. So we got 2 5/16 to A, and then right here 7/8 to B. All right, that's set up in our pocket hole jig, and make sure that this is the front of your frame. Okay, we're going to drill the holes in the back. We're going to do A and B. Just going to drill your holes into A and B. All right. You can see that hole just got in there without taking a chunk out of the side, and that's right where we want to have our 2 holes, our 2 pocket holes. Okay, so now we got our pocket holes drilled on our piece in the back here. Now we want to attach them to the other pieces of the frame. So we need a couple things here, okay? We are going to need pocket hole screws, all right? These are special screws. If you see, the screw has a square indent here. That's very important. That's a pocket hole screw, square indent, and this is 1.25 inches long, okay? We need the same type of driver bit. This has a square head to it, okay, and that fits into the screw, all right? And this is for our screw gun here, so you're also going to need a screw gun, all right? So the driver bit for that. We need one of these clamps, these good metal, they're called Craig is the brand name, good metal clamps here. We're going to need that. We're going to need some glue, all right? We need another one of these clamps. We have these clamps in the shop too, okay? So I have this laid out on this nice clean white piece of board here, scrap. I use these in the shop because our shop tables in the shop are not very flat and they're not very easy to clamp to. So we need some good, hard, flat clamping surface. This is also easy to clean in case you get glue on it. You just got to wipe it off, okay? So we need one of these scraps here too. This is the best way to get this clamped down and ready to go. Okay, so you're going to have to again put the bit into the screw gun here. Lefty loosey opens it up, all right, and then we spin it right to tighten it, or clockwise to tighten it, counterclockwise to loosen, right to tighten. We get this in, and this is our square head driver bit that fits these pocket hole screws perfectly to drill those in. So we need those two to work together, all right? We're gonna make sure we get that. I'm going to switch the speed to 1 to go a little slower. It's easier to drill in screws that way when you switch this to 1. Okay. This clamp here, all right, just going to use this to clamp my scrap piece of wood to the table so it doesn't slide around. All right, that makes it easier. I don't use this clamp to clamp the wood down. It's not strong enough. It's not good enough. Okay, these are the clamps that we use to clamp the wood down to this scrap piece of wood and keep it nice and tight and set up, okay? All right. Okay, so when we clamp and screw our pieces together, not only do I want to make sure I've got a nice tight fit here on these pieces, I want to make sure that these guys are aligned as best as possible, okay, here. So this is nice and even. Right, this is nice and straight. This should be a 90-degree angle, these two pieces of wood. You can measure that with a square to verify that. But what's also really important is that these pieces of wood are flat going across. They're nice and even this way, okay? Clamping it down to this piece of wood is the best way to do that and make sure, okay? So you're going to see me put some glue in between these surfaces here. We want to use some glue. I'm going to clamp it together. All right, I'm going to use one of these metal clamps. And when I clamp it down, I'm going to clamp it right in the middle here. That keeps this perfectly flat because it's flat against the board and it's flat against this clamp here. Okay, so if I have this flat here, all right, I make sure that I'm nice and even here, okay, 90 degrees, and then when I screw this in, we'll be all set. Some glue. I'll put it on both surfaces. Wipe it into the wood. You don't need a ton of it, just get it wet a little bit. You don't want it dripping all over the place. But you want to cover the whole surface on both sides, both pieces. All right, I'm going to put my two pieces together here. And this is, you just got to do it by feel here to make sure it's lined up nice and even, feels nice and straight. All right, put that there. Put my clamp over my piece of wood here, right in the middle. Clamp it down so that doesn't move. I will put the screws into the pocket hole, right into the hole there on both of them. All right, and I'll put my drill in and just go slow. Don't have to go super fast. Squeeze the trigger nice and lightly, slowly. Got one side. Okay, all the way in. You'll feel the screw gun fight back at you. You just stop. Don't have to go all the way through. Take this off. Okay, nice and strong, nice and flat. There's no ridge or gap here. It's perfectly flat. This is pretty good. Okay. I don't know if I was to take out a square and check it out. That's pretty good. All right, it's nice 90-degree angle. All right. Okay, so we got our first piece here. We got a nice little L shape going on. We're going to stop right here. We do not want to put this piece together. Okay, you're going to see why in the next step. But if we put this piece together now, we'll never be able to get the dowel piece in over here. But just stop at this L shape, okay? And then we have our pocket holes already drilled in. We're ready to go. But only put the screws and glue in on this one spot and then just stop. And then we'll work on the dowels. And then this will be the last step to put the whole frame together. All right?